What's up, everybody? Welcome to another issue of Hops Geek News, hopefully with less technical difficulties this time. I am one of the two wonderful co-hosts, Mash. I'm here with Hoppy Mommy. What's up?
Not much. How are you doing?
I'm
Other than the technical
fantastic.
difficulties.
Yeah, so real quick, in case it doesn't end up coming out, we recorded a really great episode last week on Batman Day, actually. We even went to Batman school and we had a really good thing. And then for some reason, we don't know what happened, but the audio decided to just kind of crash on us. And I have what we recorded. I'm just trying to get it to where it's not messed up. Might be an issue with the Skype. So we'll go from there. Whatever. We have a lot of good things lined up today. We're going to talk some news as always. We're going to talk a little latest episode of The Boys, which was pretty interesting. So that's going to be at the end of the episode. If you haven't watched yet,
Yes, from
go
beginning
ahead,
to end.
go watch it, then come back. But we have a really, really good guest on with us today, Brad from Common Law Brewing. You may have seen him on some of our Hoppy Hours. He fills in as a special guest sometimes. And he also Common Law Brewing. He's part of the ownership for that. It's a really great brewery that's going to be opening in Nashville, or I'm sorry, Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes outside of Nashville. And hopefully the spring, maybe summer, depends on the whole pandemic situation, which we're actually going to be there for. He's going to be joining us to talk about
Awesome.
pumpkin beer and how it gets made. We brought it up last week. We're like, man, we've heard that some people put too much in for pumpkin beer to overcompensate. So we decided to bring a brewer on and have a little special guest. He's our first guest on the show, so I'm pretty excited about that. However, today, right now, I'm drinking a little goodness from Loose Screw Brewery. They released a new beer not too long ago. It's called Hokey Hophead, a 6.3% IPA. Really good. I can't get enough of Loose Screw. I haven't been there in a while, unfortunately, and I finally got there yesterday. And funny enough, it sounds like somebody's gonna be filming a horror movie at their brewery here coming up. I don't want to spill too many beans from the conversation that I listened in on in case they happen to hear this and they're like, no, don't say anything. But yeah, good things coming out of that brewery. They're one of Idaho's biggest upcoming, Boise, I should say, is biggest upcoming brewery, and they're gonna be expanding soon. But what are you drinking over there? How you doing?
I'm good. I just opened a Double Thunder Funk Double IPA. It's from Bentwater Brewing in Massachusetts. They just started distributing down here, so we've been getting quite a few of their IPAs. But I picked this one today because it gave me some Gorilla Grodd feels.
That can
So
is
for
sick.
anybody listening on the podcast, I'm definitely going to post this on the Instagram because yeah, it's pink and blue gorilla like fighting. But yeah, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's Gorilla Grodd material right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a really cool can.
Yeah, so this one's pretty good. Nice double. It tastes like a West Coast double IPA. It's very good.
Ooh, nice. Yeah. Quick plug, real quick. Speaking of our Instagram, I'm gonna record some more promos. But if you've seen, I have an alter ego all of a sudden where I wear a mullet and dress up like an '80s wrestler to promote.
That's awesome.
On October 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern is going to be our first annual
9 p.m. Eastern.
9 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're all in 3 or 4 different
A lot
time
of math.
zones.
Yeah, it gets confusing.
So 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's whatever time in Alaska where Jordan's at. And then for all of you here in Idaho, 7 p.m. It's going to be our first ever Super Hop Smackdown where we take on two of the three, and Jordan and Zach from Hop Heroes Pod with JR as the moderator. And we're going to do a little trivia action. We're going to benefit the American Red Cross, and all the money is going to go to the people affected by wildfires. It's great. I decided to get real cheesy with it, so you'll see me running around in a mullet dressed up like an 80s wrestler for the next couple of weeks. And so far we have Edge Brewing Company who's agreed to promote it out for us, and 49th State Brewing Company is going to promote it out for us because we're going to be drinking their Oktoberfest. So come watch us get wasted and for a good
I gotta
cause.
say, when I saw the promo, I got scared, and I'm on your side, so I can't imagine what Hot Heroes felt watching that.
I see. I didn't share it with anybody other than I shared it with our group as I posted it, but I didn't share it with them. I knew we talked about doing a promo for it, and so I went straight up and was like, I'm just going all out with this. It's Halloween time, so I'm getting like I'm just going crazy with it. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoy doing stupid stuff like that.
Yes,
Be on the
and we'll be
lookout.
doing it live on Facebook, and we will be in costumes as well. So it is worth it
Yes,
to watch it, not just listen. And after the fact, it'll go on their podcast platforms and ours as well. So
absolutely.
that'll be a lot of fun. I am looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, I can't wait.
but and before we get too much into that, so what have you read or watched this week?
Yes. So it feels like forever since we recorded this, and I guess it kind of has, but hasn't. I don't know. All the time kind of runs together. I was sick this week actually, and which gave a little time to reading some comics, and I got around to reading. There's a new run of Iron Man out. It's just called Iron Man. First issue came out a couple weeks ago. I got around to reading that, and it's basically what it's about is he's Tony Stark's kind of going through like a midlife crisis, I guess. He's he liquidated all of his money, putting it in a different, basically reallocating it, getting away from the normal Tony Stark tech stuff, trying to find himself again. And he meets up with some old superheroes who say it. I think him and Janet the Wasp had a thing in a previous comic run because
Oh, I think they might have. I know in the older ones, when you read it, Ant-Man's always telling Janet she needs to calm down because she's always like such a cornball. Like she makes comments about Thor, and he's like, "You need to, stop thinking about things like that." It's really funny. But I mean, when you look
yeah,
at the history of them, like a lot of these characters have slept with a lot of these characters. Like Black Widow slept with Wolverine, and like I mean, they've all slept with each
that's
other,
true.
so that wouldn't surprise me.
When you're as beautiful as all these superheroes are and all these powers, why not? It's basically a frat house.
Right.
But yeah, so she shows up and he's like, we can't do this anymore. They're like, I agree. And then Janet just flies away. So it's like, oh, okay. I didn't realize they were doing whatever they were doing. But yeah, at the end, there's like a superhero or a villain that pops up called a unicorn. He starts trashing things, and that's kind of your introduction into that. So I did watch that, or I read that rather. I watched The Boys, and then I watched my first spooky movie last night, getting ready for the Halloween
Ooh.
season. We decorated. I watched a crappy movie called Polaroid. I fell asleep like 15 minutes in, so I can't even say that I watched it. It's about like this. You take a Polaroid picture on this camera of somebody, and like there's a ghost that kills that
Okay.
person or something. I like I said, I fell asleep like halfway through, and so I didn't fully watch it, but I'm still counting as I put on a spooky movie. It is spooky season. Uh,
Yeah.
but how about you? What have you been watching? What are you reading? What's going on?
Well, we haven't jumped into the spooky movies yet, but we've already had Nightmare on repeat just because the
Oh
soundtrack
yeah.
alone, like, we'll just put that on just to listen to the music. But as far as reading, I read Flashpoint, which you sent me.
Oh yeah.
Um, I loved it. A very quick, easy read. It was shorter than I expected, especially after reading The Dark Knight, because that one was a little bit longer. But
Hmm.
I really loved that it wasn't Batman, it was Batman's dad. Spoiler alert on that.
Yes.
But I thought the story was great, especially because I'm so familiar with all the characters from all the TV shows and movies. So it was nice to actually read about Barry Allen. But I gotta say, he's a lot bigger in the comic than I had expected because when they cast him, Ezra Miller and Grant Gustin, they're not huge dudes.
No,
He
Flash is
looked more
shredded in the
like,
comics.
yeah, he really is. He gave me like a Thor kind of vibe, like when he's Donald Blake, and then he sheds off the doctor thing and he's like, Rrr. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I find that interesting that Ezra Miller and Grant Gustin are so skinny. Because yeah, he seemed more like Stephen Amell.
Yeah.
But I like what they've done with CW, so I can't complain. And he's also very young in that, so maybe as that's why they cast it the way they did. I don't know. But I've also been watching a little bit of The Preacher. It is kind of slow. The story moves a little slow. They're looking for God, who's a literal God, but it's definitely enjoyable. I can tell because it's written by the same person as The Boys, Garth Ennis, and he really likes the whole these people who look young and don't age have children who are older than them. Because this past week watching The Boys and watching Preacher, that was a situation in both of those. So I'll leave it at that. But I thought that was an interesting similarity between the two. And what else did I watch this week? Oh, I watched A Tribute for a King with Chadwick Boseman. I finally got around to
Ooh,
doing that.
how was that? I
It
haven't been
was
able to
good.
bring myself to it yet.
Yeah, it was impressive that they did that within like 48 hours of him passing. You had almost all the Avengers said something. I mean, they had Oprah on there. They talked about Denzel Washington funding him to go to. It was really good, very well done, and of course, towards the end, they're kind of like promoting early screening because by the time he was diagnosed, he was stage 3.
Hmm.
So no, it was really good, definitely worth watching. Um, I didn't cry as much as I expected to, so that's good. So,
I
because it wasn't just, they weren't just pulling at your heartstrings. They were literally just honoring all these characters that are
mhm.
so iconic that he's brought to life. And I'm halfway through Hot Heroes last week, but they do a whole episode where they actually talk about each of the movies
Yes,
he's
they
in. So
do.
it's almost more of a breakdown. Because we just kind of did a toast and a tribute and like thank you Chadwick Boseman on ours, but they've done a whole episode. So I do recommend if you're a Black Panther fan, if you're a Chadwick Boseman fan, or just a fan of cinema in general, it's definitely worth it. It is on Disney Plus now. Disney Plus has no commercials. Hulu does. And then go listen to Hop Heroes Chadwick Boseman tribute as well. So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. I watched Endgame with my son for the first time. Well, not for the first time. I've seen it a million times. He's seen bits and pieces, but we watched it together and man, of course he has no idea. So when the portals all open, everyone starts coming out. He's like, "Oh, it's Black Panther. Oh my God, it's Spider-Man. Oh my God, it's this." And he's just like naming off heroes and I'm sitting there like, "Oh my God, it's Black Panther." And you just everything kind of hits you and you're like, "Oh man, you're never gonna see Black Panther
new
like
scene.
that. He just comes out of the portals and it makes it that much more iconic now going back and
Yeah.
watching it than when you first watch it a million times because yeah it's iconic but knowing what we know now it's just holy shit dude I can't and it kind of hit me in the feels and then see my son like just losing his mind over all the superheroes I was like oh man I'm getting hit from all angles what is these emotions I'm feeling right now
Yeah.
so
We haven't had Endgame on since then. We've had Black Panther on since, but we haven't seen Endgame since July.
wow man
But
it still holds up it still holds up.
oh, definitely. I could watch it again, again, and again. I mean, you don't get the initial feels you got the first time, but you still get the feels.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Any those I'll just listen to the Portals music on the soundtrack just when I need to get amped up for something. I'll be sitting
There
at
you go.
work and I'm just like, man, I need that motivation. I'll throw on the Portals soundtrack or the soundtrack for Avengers, just play the Portals and I'm like, all right, let's get to it. I'm ready now.
Yeah, it's amazing what a little bit of movie magic can do. I feel like every year
Yeah.
Elf, the scene where Santa flies through New York, I'm always like,
Yes.
that's Christmas.
Well, yeah, because it takes you back, and you're like, oh, that's the Christmas spirit that you kind of lose as you get older, and it's different when you have kids that are younger because you can kind of revisit that Christmas spirit that you might have lost. But then everyone gets older, and then Christmas becomes more of just like go through the
Gotta get
motions.
everything done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets kind of hectic, and so I'm finally excited because my kids are at that age where you can really start playing up the Christmas ham and just
Yeah.
go crazy with it. We just decorated for Halloween. My son's like, it's spooky. The house is spooky. So all that kind of stuff is fun and exciting now.
Yeah. My
And
3-year-old just goes, this is Halloween over and over and over. It's
I
cute the first
we
5 minutes.
it's cute, but then it's like, okay, we get it. My
Well, then
we're
he's
not
like, is it Halloween today? Can I have candy today? Fuck, no.
no. Well, yeah, because my son would be like, hey, tomorrow's Halloween. I'm like, no, we still have a month. He goes, but tomorrow's
Right.
Halloween. I'm like, no, it's not.
Halloween time.
Yes,
All
it's
right.
this.
So,
We have
breaking
news.
news.
We do have some news.
Do-do-do, do-do-do.
Let's see. According to a report by Variety, Nick Fury Disney Plus show is coming our way, but and it's going to be obviously played by Samuel Jackson. They reportedly are going to start filming at some time here soon. He's going to be the main character, and we're going to get a little Nick Fury show.
Wow.
I kind
I
of
didn't realize that. I thought he was just going to be guest starring on some of the
no.
other shows.
He
Oh,
is
nice.
like it's the Nick Fury show. So I wonder if it's going to be him rebuilding uh
Yield.
yeah, after the end game stuff, because you got to move forward now. And I mean, maybe they'll do a bunch of flashbacks potentially, but I kind of feel like you don't need that after Captain Marvel. So it's
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna be him, and I'd expect to see Colby Smulders popping up as Maria Hill. I'm sorry, because they're 1 and 2 without they always are together. So I imagine
Right.
she'll be popping up as well. But yeah, we got a Nick Fury show coming. Um, I was browsing Reddit, and I follow something called Movie Details. And well, something that caught my eye was in Deadpool 2, they were going over the superheroes of who they can bring into their X Force. And
Yeah.
uh,
Seems redundant.
Ginsburg, her picture, he pulls that out, and it's her, and they mention her. So that was something really cool, especially after her passing. It's like, oh, going back and seeing that she's always been that like superhero to people, or just because she's
No, I had remembered seeing that when you said that, but I did not. I had completely forgot. But yeah, that is pretty
I
cool
didn't
that you
put
had
two
her
and
on
two
there as a
together. Yeah.
superhero. So Deadpool thinks RBJ is a superhero. I like it.
Yes, and then we have Loki's resuming filming. It looks like they're trying to track it for release of early spring of 21. In a time when we're all starved for Marvel content, they pushed all the movies back, which I know you're going to talk about here in a second. At least we'll get TV shows. Maybe we'll be getting more and more of these Marvel TV shows just to kind of cover up, since nobody's going to the movies right now. They're going to throw us a bone and be like, here's your What If series, here's your Loki
Right.
series, here's Z series. So that'll be nice. And also, going to a little DC, you might have heard a little movie called Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, is going to be coming out. It's been finished. It's getting pushed to next year, I believe. And one of the stars, John Cena, is going to be playing Peacemaker. Well, on his Twitter, uh, James Gunn was kind of like, yeah, I've had a lot of time during quarantine, so I decided to write a TV show. Most of us have been watching TV shows. This man just got bored and wrote a TV show. So we got a Peacemaker TV show starring John Cena coming out. And everyone's kind of out there, of course, in the Twitter world, like, oh, this means he's going to live. He's going to live. Not necessarily. It could be his life leading up to the Suicide Squad. It could be anything. You know, there's a lot of room to play with within that. So I'm excited because John Cena, I think he's a decent actor, especially hamming it up in some sort of cheesy villain role. And so I think it's going to be on HBO Max is what they're going to be putting it out on.
Nice. Yeah, I've liked him in the stuff I've seen him in. But you never know with sports people. Like, they are sometimes the worst actors in the entire world. And I feel like anytime they can act, they get, like, people love it. And just, you look at The Rock as well. Like, if you ever watched the show The League,
Yes,
anybody
yes.
who was that cut, yeah, you could all, I mean, when they would have real football players come on, they were always terrible. It was,
Yeah.
oh my God, it was like cringeworthy acting.
It really
Um,
was.
all right, so my release, or my release, my breaking news, like you had just said, was the new release dates. So Black Widow, we saw this coming. We knew this wasn't going to happen. It's now been moved to May 7th, 2021. So it's gotten pushed back an entire year. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is July 9th, 2021, and Eternals is November 5th, 2021. So we had 0 in 2020 MCU movies. So hopefully we actually do get to have 3 movies in 2021. So we'll see. Like I said, at this point, I'm not planning anything or putting
I,
anything in the calendar until the day of these days.
yeah, I'm not
But
getting my hopes up at all.
yeah, I hope to God if it comes to a year that they do finally just release it and charge us, $40 or whatever.
That makes me wonder if Mulan didn't do as well as they were hoping, which of course it wasn't. First of all, there's not as big of a market for Mulan as there is for like Black Widow and all that. And then number two, they went ahead and said that, hey, in 2 months you're going to be able to just to get it for free anyways.
Right. And then
So
there was the whole controversy around her as well, where a lot of people refused to pay for it that I think we're gonna. So you had like, all 3 of those things going against them.
yeah, exactly. So I think that I hope I'm with you. Maybe if by next summer we still can't go to movie theaters, just give us something. I get it. TV shows are awesome, but these movies, and I miss the movie experience so much, but
Yeah.
we're working with what we got here, and it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Unfortunately, I hate that saying it is what it is, but it has been more relevant lately than it has ever been.
Right. I mean, I hate it myself, but it's kind of, you're at
Right.
this point that it's like, what else can I
What
do?
else can you say? Yeah.
I can complain all day about it, but at some point it's just kind of shrug my shoulders and I'm like, all right, well,
In the past, I always thought it is what it is meant you were giving in. No, you can change your own life. Right
yeah,
now, it is what it is.
but
You're absolutely right.
literally, yeah. So
I'm just very happy that these movies were not pushed back. I mean, could you imagine if Infinity War happened and then Corona happened and we
oh
had to
my
wait
God,
years to get Endgame?
you don't get Endgame for like 3 years or something like that. First of all, the amount of theories you'd be reading out there are going to get so annoying. But
Yeah.
then, like, oh man, yeah, I can't imagine it. Well, Wonder Woman, I wonder if that's going to hurt Wonder Woman releasing at all, because they've been pushed to Christmas. But that movie was supposed to have come out in June, which I know is after Black Widow. But I think Marvel has more legs to stand on at this point than your DC movies. So getting Marvel, you're not going to have any sort of hurt coming from, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
It's getting pushed back, whatever. Whereas DC, it's like, hey, we're going to keep pushing it back. Interest is going to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see, I guess.
All right. So my next bit was WandaVision. There was a new trailer released, but still no date. So we don't know
Oh,
when
I
that's
did
coming
notice that.
out. But the new trailer does look awesome. So if you haven't seen it, you can see it on Marvel. You can see it on YouTube. So this one's fun. This is a rumor, but if, I read it in an article that, of course, that was a confirmed source that's been right about rumors in the past. So there is a rumor. I don't think it's true, but I really hope it is that Deadpool will be the new constant cameo instead of Stan Lee in some of the MCU movies.
Oh, I hadn't
Um,
heard that.
because he can just break the fourth wall and just kind of jump in and whatnot. But they have said though that they're still going to try to do some Stan Lee cameos, and we even saw it in Deadpool. I think it was Deadpool 2, where there was like graffiti on the wall, or you've seen pictures of Stan Lee in the background.
Hmm.
So they are still going to try to do that. Now that part, I believe, the Deadpool thing, that would be amazing. And honestly, they should. They own him now. Do it.
I mean, they do,
Um,
and he's like the highest. He's a big draw, so you can't just toss Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool off to the side. You'd have to do
no,
something.
and it's got to be Ryan Reynolds.
Oh yeah,
So The Mandalorian, season 2 comes out next month, but Giancarlo Esposito, which is Moff Gideon, has already said that they are working on season 4. So, I mean, not
damn.
surprising with the success of the show. It seems to be the most popular thing, honestly, in the Star Wars world right now.
Yeah, oh
So they're
yeah.
already working on 4, so that's good. And then WB, I don't remember if you brought up this one or I did. They're looking for Jim Carrey to play an older Joker. He wouldn't be the actual Joker, but someone more so inspired by Jaquan Phoenix's Joker. Because now that they have the multiverse, I think they're like Pandora's box is open, and I think that they're just trying to come up with all these ideas and everything. I personally think of Jim Carrey as the Riddler, so
Agreed.
but I mean, he has played really dark roles as well. So I mean, I wouldn't put it past him that he could do it. But to me, I mean, he's too goofy. He's the Riddler.
Well, yeah, but I feel like the Jim Carrey of the last 10 years, that poor guy has been through some stuff. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't
he
play
looks rough.
the goofy characters anymore. I mean, you have all of his movies in the 90s. He was at the top of his stuff. I love Jim Carrey. But I think I mean, you got him in Sonic, which he did a really good job in Sonic, I
Oh, I
thought.
haven't seen that.
Yeah, he did a really good job at Sonic, and they're going to make a sequel where, Dr. Robotnik, spoiler alert, there's a scene that kind of has him in the bald look with the mustache to kind of set you up for that sequel. Um, so maybe, but I don't see him playing a Joker. I don't think he
I
would
mean,
probably. I don't see it
well,
personally.
I don't see it either. But at the same time, like, I mean, he did Man on the Moon.
Eternal
He has
Sunshine.
done. He has done roles like that.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, if they're playing with it, obviously they see something, and Joker can be so many different characters. And when I was reading this as well, I didn't realize that like the Jaquan Phoenix one, they intended it to be a standalone. They never intended it to be
Yep.
connected. But now with doing the multiverse, they're saying that it can be. But then they also said that that character Arthur wasn't necessarily the Joker, like the Joker that we're
Hmm.
accustomed to. It was somebody that inspired the Joker.
So yeah, the beautiful thing about the Joker is they never give you his true origin because he doesn't even know himself. And that kind of lends you to open up to all these different opportunities of, is this the real Joker? We don't know. Is this all
Another
these different,
copycat.
right? And because he never has a true origin. And that is the best thing about it. And the best thing DC could do, I think, is, hey, let's go ahead, let's go out there, we will play into our multiverse because there's so many things you can do with that and it's different. And yeah, I'm interested to see how that plays out. Don't do a sequel for the Joker, but there is something to play into there, and then maybe they all collide, something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean the world is infinite now. They can do whatever they want. Just do it good. Have patience. That's my only advice to DC, because I know everyone at DC is going to be listening to this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Just have patience. Don't focus on just the moments. Like, do it right. Don't do it quick. If you guys are better than a Marvel movies in 10 years, that's awesome. We have something to look forward to in 10 years. Don't try to be better than the MCU right away.
Right. I mean, don't
And
try to
now that
outdo it.
everybody at DC has,
I think that we can't try to outdo it because then that we got into the mess that we've currently gotten into. Oh no.
oh, my frozen.
You were frozen, yeah. Um, I'll just edit that
Can you
out.
hear
You're
me?
frozen again. Yeah, I can hear you. You there?
Okay, so
I'm
I'm
gonna
back
end
here.
up. I'm gonna end up once we get to our guests in a minute, ending this session, and we'll start a new session so I don't hit that 40 minutes.
Okay. Um, okay, so my other news was downtown Disney in California just unveiled a beautiful mural of Chadwick Boseman doing the Wakanda Forever with a little boy in a hospital gown wearing a Black Panther mask.
Oh man.
I saw the picture. It's absolutely gorgeous. So if you get a chance, I don't even know if they're open. I don't even think Disneyland's open. But if you get a chance,
Disneyland.
definitely find the mural.
No, I think no. Disneyland, to my knowledge, is not open. It's meanwhile Florida's like, hey, max capacity at the parks, max capacity at the bars, max capacity everywhere. Everyone just get out there.
Yeah, so Disney actually took away their partial capacity rules, but as far as I know, you still have to have masks and everything.
Oh boy.
So I won't be going to Disney for another couple weeks at least, and hopefully they still have masks. I don't know, we'll see. That's this whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
Walking Dead returns October 4th.
Ooh.
And they're
Wow.
actually doing something before that on AMC to kind of get you ready, like a little behind the scenes kind of thing about the Whisperer Wars. I'm behind a season, but I will say in the comic, the Whisperer Wars was very quick. It was really good, and I loved how they ended it, but it was quick. So it seems like they stretched that out like the whole season, I guess.
Yeah, I'm behind like 8 seasons. I'm gonna be on. This is the final season, isn't it?
Yes, this is the final season. I want to catch up. I figure, I told my husband, like, let's catch up now. It's Halloween time.
It is the perfect time.
Yeah. So last week I mentioned Ant-Man 3 villain was cast if we ever get last week's episode aired. So it has been confirmed he's going to be King the Conqueror. So he's usually a Fantastic Four villain, sometimes Avengers. But he could be our new big villain to replace Thanos. We don't know yet. His name is Nathaniel Richards, and it's believed he's a descendant of Reed Richards, but he's actually a time traveler. So the theories is that he is, oh, you're losing your mind. He is, the theory is that he's the new villain because they fucked up the timeline in Endgame, especially with Loki getting the Tesseract, and so that might have angered him. So only time shall see. But one of his love interests is Mantis, so there's also theories that because Mantis is so much more powerful in the comics, that maybe this will bring out some of more of, because she's, right now she is very powerful. You saw her like mentally take down Thanos for a little bit, but she's more so like a punchline kind of thing, and just like I mean, it's also Guardians of the Galaxy, so we've kind of looked at all of them as powers. Yeah. So maybe we get to see some of her actual badassness. So, and my last bit of news, which I like because I'm buying these for Christmas. Barbie's releasing 2 new dolls that look like Black Widow.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to get my daughter. She's into dolls and stuff now. She turns 2 next week, so or this week actually. By the time this comes out, she turns 2 on Saturday. So
yeah, and they're legit Barbies.
Awesome. That's pretty exciting. I think Barbie's one of those things you kind of forget about. I guess for me, because my sister used to play with those, but now I'm like, oh god, I guess I'm gonna start buying those for my daughter.
Yeah, we have a million Barbies, but we also have a lot of, she's got the Barbies mixed in with the superhero high dolls.
Oh yeah.
So we got a ton of that. We got Wonder Woman, we got the Invisible Jet, we got Batwoman, we got Harley Quinn. So I think that's kind of cool because anytime I see like Black Widow or Shuri or any of the female ones, I buy them, but they're all different sizes. So it's kind of nice that she has the Barbies are consistent with the Disney princesses and all that. Yeah. So I mean, I love that because my daughter will play superheroes and Barbies.
Well, hey, now we got Barbie superheroes. And going back real quick, you mentioned he might be the descendant of Reed Richards potentially. I wonder if this is our introduction, getting the Fantastic Four and X-Men and all them in. I can't wait. So excited. Kang the Conqueror. I do know a good decent amount about him, so hell yeah. Ant-Man's my favorite Marvel movie, so I'm there. Opening night, COVID or not, I'm there.
Just go in a hazmat suit.
I'm there. But yes, I'm a bunch of good news coming out. We have a lot of good things coming. And now we have a special guest for you guys. Right. We're here with Brad from Common Law Brewing. Brad is one of our good friends. We've all become really good friends, especially over the last 7-8 months. He's one of he watches us, and then he even joins as a co-host. And he's brewing a lot of good beer. He's got a brewery coming out to a place near you in Spring Hill, Tennessee, hopefully in the spring.
In fact, we drank his beer when we were toasting Black
We
Panther
did.
on a previous Geek episode. So now you
Yep.
guys can see the
That's
brewer
right.
or
We
listen to
did.
the brewer.
We drank the version of their Black is Beautiful. So Brad, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talking some seasonal beers with you.
Yes, it is fall. It is officially fall now. I can say
It
this.
is
It's
It
pumpkin
officially
is.
season.
fall.
Nobody is telling me different.
It
It is
is.
50 degrees out this morning. As far as I'm concerned,
Whoa.
we're in pumpkin season. Idaho doesn't know it yet because there's no pumpkin beers on the shelves, but it's fine. It's no, it's cool. It's cool. My mental health, who cares about it? But yeah, so last week
Episode is spiraling.
this episode is spiraling quickly like my mental health. Anyways, we were talking last week about pumpkin beers and how a lot of brewers tend to maybe overcompensate. They add a lot more spices into it. And so we're like, what better way to figure out the science behind brewing a pumpkin beer? Because you guys are brewing a pumpkin dunkel, which I believe you guys actually tested out this past Friday. And
Yep.
want to hear straight from the source of someone brewing it, the science behind it.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think a lot of pumpkin beers that are on the market, people think to make something pumpkin, it has to be like all the way pumpkin. And so you get a lot that like, you know, the thing I always compare it to, you see like the old like Bozo the Clown episodes or whatever, where they're throwing pies at people's faces. If a beer makes you feel like you just got smacked in the face with a pumpkin pie, it's probably a little too much pumpkin, at least for me. I prefer something that's a little more subtle flavor. And there are, you know, looking at it from a brewing perspective, there are a couple of different ways that you get pumpkin into beer. You know, so obviously pumpkin itself, the actual gourd, is a great base, in my opinion, for making a pumpkin beer. You'd be amazed how many pumpkin beers out there have no pumpkin in them. But to me, a pumpkin beer should always have pumpkin. And so depending on what you're looking for flavor profile wise, how heavy you want the pumpkin taste in it, you can add it during the mash, actually. You can put it in the boil. Some people actually put it directly into the fermenter and just kind of let the pumpkin sit at the bottom of the beer as it's fermenting. So a lot of different ways that you can get it in there. To give you some kind of perspective, so the batch that we served on Friday was just super small batch off of our home brewing equipment. So it was a 5-gallon batch. It had about 4 pounds of pumpkin in it. So about half of that in the mash and about half of it in the boil. So if you think about the cans of like pumpkin that you can buy to make pumpkin pies out of, the really big can is about 2 pounds. So 2 of those is essentially what goes in. And that's the level of pumpkin you need for a very subtle pumpkin flavor. If you were going for smack you in the face pumpkin, you'd probably use 8 to 10 pounds to really get it to pop out. So that's generally how we get pumpkin into beer. The way you'll see it done a lot, and we do a little bit of this with ours, is pie spice. So you see the pumpkin pie spice blend that's on the shelf at any grocery store. It's typically like cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, allspice, and a little bit of ginger. I think they refer to those as like the Fantastic Five or something like that of pie spicing. But you know, that gives you that's what people associate with pumpkin pie flavor. It's not really the pumpkin itself, it's more the pie spice. It's the cinnamon and some of the other things that go along with it. And so a lot of brewers, including us, do use pie spices in their beers as well. So typically with us, we're throwing those in right at the end of the boil. Because we want them to be exposed to a little bit of heat so that you release the aromatics from them, but we don't want them to be exposed to so much heat that you kind of fully break them down. You can also add them in either fermentation or in secondary right before you're about to go to keg. You can get some pretty robust flavors out of them that way as well. And that's actually how a lot of pumpkin beers that you'll find on the market get their flavor. It's more from the pie spice side of things than it is the actual pumpkin. You know, and then I think the considerations beyond that are more, what do you want to put in there to help balance it? So there are a lot of flavors that pumpkin goes well with. Some of them that you wouldn't necessarily think about finding in beers very often, but like sweet potato. Pumpkin and sweet potato go really well together. The thing that we love to use if we're doing pumpkin beers is vanilla. I think vanilla helps to add a little bit of sweetness, a little more depth, gives it kind of a creamier flavor to it. And obviously, anytime you're talking pumpkin pie, there's going to be some, if not in the pie itself, you're putting whipped cream on top of it, you're getting some good vanilla flavor out of your whipped cream. And so to us, that's that's kind of a must for pumpkin beers. I think it really balances out the earthiness of the pumpkin really well. So those are kind of, just generally speaking from a brewing perspective, that's how you get pumpkin in there. The thing that you kind of start with even before you get to that point, though, is what kind of beer are you putting it in? Most of the pumpkin ales that you'll see on the market are usually American amber ales. Got a nice like coppery to red color, nice malty backbone, not a lot of hops to them. That's kind of your traditional. You'll also occasionally see a blonde ale or something like that that's got a little bit of pumpkin in it. Obviously, you see stouts and porters on the darker end of things. Mash, as you mentioned, the one that we just did, and one of the reasons we really like it is because it's something a little different. So we use our Dunkelweiss base, which if anybody's not familiar with it, is a brown wheat beer, kind of a darker wheat beer from the German brewing tradition. I think it pairs really, really well with the pumpkin. Dunkelweiss it's not overly sweet. It's a pretty smooth beer. It's got lots of mouthfeel to it, kind of a thick, heavier body. You add a little bit of like subtle pumpkin, a little bit of pie spice, some vanilla on top of that, and it really makes for a well-rounded beer. We served it Friday night at an Oktoberfest here locally, and just got absolute rave reviews. Yeah. And it's funny because pumpkin bears are they're divisive.
There's a big controversy behind pumpkin out there.
Yeah, they are divisive, and it's one of those styles of beer that some people love it, Mash. Some people just hate it.
Love it, yeah.
The sound of pumpkin beer just makes them like want to strangle somebody. Yeah, it really is. And it's funny too, if you look at, and I know we've made fun of Untapped ratings on numerous occasions because of their just blatant subjectivity, but if you go look on Untapped and just search for pumpkin and let it bring up all beers with pumpkin, and you can actually sort it by how popular the beers are. So the popularity on Untapped is a mix of how many check-ins the beer has and its overall rating. So if your beer's a 3.9 rating, but it's got 200,000 check-ins, it'll be listed as more popular than a 3.95 beer that only has a couple hundred check-ins. Just because more than likely you have a beer overall, it's just the other one just doesn't have enough check-ins to really see what it should be rated. So if you rate, right. If you rate by popularity on Untapped for pumpkin beers, Southern Tier Pumpkin is the number one beer on the list, which is probably, that's my go-to pumpkin beer. They all make a cold pressed coffee version of pumpkin, which is probably my favorite pumpkin beer that I've ever had. But it's really interesting. It's really interesting if you look at the ratings. So like, pumpkin is the most popular beer on there. I think pumpkin is like a 3.8 rated beer. It's not, it's, if you go to the stout list, the highest rated beer on it's like a 4.78 or something like, it's just really high rated beers.
It's like that in general on Untappd though, like certain New England IPAs will, like the best one will be rated very high, but then you go, oh, this is the best Pilsner and it's rated like a 3.8. Yep. So I feel like that's very common in general with a lot of styles on Untappd, because when I check a beer in, I try to check it in for what it is, not necessarily my personal preference. I may make comments if it's like, well, I'm not big into sours, or if I really just don't like this style, I just won't rate it, but I'll check it in so I remember where I got it. But it kind of blows my mind with some of that stuff. Yeah, and stouts are always rated higher. Yeah,
stouts are real high, hazies are high, fruited sours are high, but it definitely, and that's the subjectivity of Untappd. I think if Untappd were to work properly, everybody would have to understand how the beer they're drinking compares to what that style should be.
Right. But it's made for a layman.
But it's not. Yeah, it's not. It's made for just the random guy who walks into a bar. Exactly.
So I had a friend last night at a brewery. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but she was at a brewery last night checking in her beers, and the actual one of the owners or somebody who worked there came over and said, "Are you the one checking beers in on Untappd?" And he goes, "Your threes are gonna tank us."
Oh my, she got called
Yes.
up at the bar. Oh my
She got
God.
called out at the
Oh
brewery.
my
I won't even
God.
say her name on air, but yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
It's
But
like,
okay.
well, maybe brew better
Yeah.
beer, I guess. I don't know. It's all subjective.
Yeah, and there's a huge subjectivity to it, and it's funny too because so the beers that we served Friday night, we served 3 beers, and this was not a huge event, probably a couple hundred people, nice outdoor, had live German music, had a food truck serving bratwurst and stuff, and I think there were 20-ish breweries or so there, so handful of people other than us, not a super big event. We were pouring just like 2-ounce sample pours. I will say we kicked our kegs before anybody else at the event. So it was a 4-hour event. We ran out of beer about 2.5 hours into it. So,
Man.
and we had a line the whole event, which was awesome. We got really good reaction out of the beer, but the 3 beers that we put out for that event, we did an all German lineup since it was an Oktoberfest event. So we did our Pumpkin Dunkel, that we've already talked about,
You gotta say
which
the
we
name,
call
though.
"Well, I'll be a Pumpkin's Dunkel."
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Love
I'll
it.
be a Pumpkin's Dunkel.
I love that.
And then we also did kind of an obscure German style called a Kottbusser. That's it's a wheat beer, a blonde wheat beer that was outlawed when the Reinheitsgebot passed because it has additive ingredients in it. It has honey and molasses in it. So if you think of it, it's somewhat like a honey wheat, but it has a little more earthy flavor because of the molasses that's in it. Really smooth, kind of full-bodied blonde beer. So we served that, which I can almost guarantee you that anyone that tried it, it was the first beer of that style they've ever had in their entire life, because it's just a really rare style of beer, which was kind of cool. And then we had a Schwarzbier. So if you're familiar with Schwarzbier, it's a black lager. Normally has a nice roasty flavor to it. We use dehusked dark malts to get that flavor in it without adding a lot of bitterness. Crisp, clean, just like you would expect out of a lager. To me, it's the perfect fall lager because it feels a little bit better in cooler weather because of that roastiness and almost an iced coffee kind of flavor.
Right.
But it's still light, it's still crisp, it's still refreshing. It's only about 5%, so you can drink them all day. So those were the 3 beers that we took with us. And it's funny. So we had them all loaded into Untappd ahead of the event so that anybody that had them could check them in if they wanted to. And it's really funny to see just the absolute range of ratings that these beers got checked in at, and especially like the pumpkin one. I think somebody gave it like a 4.5, and then I think somebody gave it like a 2.75. Like there's no way that the same beer coming out of the same keg at the same time in the exact same situation could possibly be either that good or that bad.
Right.
It's just the subjectivity of the ratings coming out of it. And so, typically from a brewing perspective, like when I put stuff on there, so I know we've had this conversation before. When I use Untappd personally, I'm just using it to keep up with what beers I've drank.
Oh, yeah.
I'll use it to look up what's in a beer, what hops are in it, what fruits in it, what adjuncts are in it. If it's a stout, just a little information behind the beer, but really I'm using it to say, okay, did I like it? Did I drink it? And that's all I really care about. But when I'm looking at it from a brewer's perspective, really all I'm looking for is there a flaw in the beer? Did we put something out in cans where it got oxidized in the canning process and it's across the board getting a lower rating because there's something flawed? Or is there some taste in it that people we thought it was fine, but people as a whole just really don't like it? With our pumpkin, was there too much pie spice? Or was there not enough pie spice? Which is probably more the case on this one. I think next time we do it, we'll probably up the pie spice a little bit. But so that's really what we use it for, and some comic relief, honestly. There's an Instagram account. It's either WTF Untappd or Untappd WTF.
Yeah.
That all they do is post stupid reviews from Untappd, so that people can just laugh at the absurdity.
They also post all the funny glasses. Untappd WTF.
Yep.
But yeah, there was one, maybe it might have been Worst Beer Blog. That's another great one where somebody complained about the beer tasting fermented.
Oh
yeah.
My God. Oh man.
Yeah.
That is, I use it the same
I'm guessing to give this person benefit of the doubt, maybe she meant oxidized, but she was saying fermented and she stuck with it. So for anybody who doesn't know, all beer is fermented. That's how
it literally goes. That's how you make beer.
So I
Yeah.
actually have
Yeah.
a question.
Sure.
Oh, about the pumpkin, because when I did, for anybody who listens to Hop News knows that I do beer school, but my beer school is
Hmm.
solely research based. It's not personal experience
Yep.
because I've brewed a couple times and it hasn't been so great. So when I was researching the founding fathers, I found out, that George Washington was the original basic bitch and brewed pumpkin beer, but that
Yep.
the pumpkin all fermented and it didn't taste like pumpkin. So do
Hmm.
you have to do, and I assume that's where all the pumpkin pie spice comes in, but do you
Yep.
add pumpkin later so it doesn't ferment so much of the flavor away?
Yeah, so there are kind of two different ways to approach that. The pie spice is probably the common way to approach it. So anything that has sugars in it is subject to fermentation. So to get a good pumpkin flavor in just using pumpkin, you just kind of have to up the amount of it that you have in there. The thing that you're going to run into, regardless of when you're adding it, so if you're adding it in the mash with your grains, you're pulling some of the pumpkin flavor, you're pulling some of the sugar from the pumpkin down into your wort. If you're adding it in the bowl, kind of same thing, you're adding sugars directly into it. If you add it even during fermentation, the yeast are still going to go after the sugars that they can within the pumpkin. And it's the same way if you were to say, okay, I'm going to ferment this beer completely out, and then when it's done, I'm going to add pumpkin to it. If there is yeast still in suspension, it will start fermenting again.
Okay.
So you either have to dose it with something like K-Meta or something that will kill the yeast, or you have to run it through a high-end filter that pulls all the yeast out of it.
Is that like the
Otherwise,
Randall?
you will get re-fermentation. Or if you keep it cold enough, if you go ahead and bring the beer down to like 38 degrees, bring it down to a serving temperature, and then add more pumpkin, the yeast won't re-ferment because it's too cold for them to re-ferment. So a lot of times if you see, you will see, this is really common in sours, you'll see fruited sours that have a little label on the side of them that says contains fresh fruit, must stay cold.
Oh yeah.
Reason it must stay cold is because if it comes up to room temperature, there are active yeast in fermented fruit. It will start fermentation again, and when you open that can, it will go
Fun
everywhere.
fact.
And they're
If
always
the can,
like
if
bright red.
if the
too.
can
It'll go
doesn't
like that
explode.
in your car as well, because I've got
Yeah,
two
if the
cans
can
in my
doesn't
car.
explode first. Yeah. So there are some ways to do it where you can keep unfermented sugars from pumpkin in it, but really it's just a matter of getting enough of the pumpkin itself in there to give you a good baseline flavor, using a little bit of pie spice to kind of tease that out a little bit, and then using some complementary things to help kind of build a nice little world around the pumpkin to help showcase it some.
Are there
Awesome.
certain yeasts that will, I guess, die out sooner than others that you might choose to use for that, or no?
Yeah, your yeast is normally driven by beer style, but there are definitely, so each yeast has very specific characteristics to it, and there are hundreds of different yeast strains out there. Really, the one that you would think about in terms of that would be probably attenuation. So attenuation is just a percentage, and what it tells you is, on average, when you give the yeast 100 parts of sugar, how many of those parts of sugar will the yeast eat? And some yeast have higher attenuation, some yeast have lower attenuation, some yeast are down in the 60s. So they leave a lot of residual sugar, and that's just kind of how they function. Some yeasts are up in like the 80s, even into the 90s, and so they produce much drier beers. And so if you were, especially if you were doing a pumpkin beer that was in like an amber ale or a really basic beer recipe, you could definitely use yeast to try to determine how much residual sugar gets left over. The thing you have to keep in mind is you're also going to get residual sugar left over from your normal malts in that too. And so you're going to end up with a sweeter beer overall. So your final gravity of your beer is going to be much higher, a lot more residual sugar in it. You're going to end up with a more syrupy style beer, kind of a heavier body to it, and it's going to be just kind of naturally sweeter. Depending on what you're looking for, that may be perfect. If you're going for something that's full on pumpkin pie, maybe that sweetness is exactly what you want. What we were going for was more of a, we want you to feel pumpkin and fall, but we want you to really taste a beer where the pumpkin complements the beer, as opposed to a beer where the pumpkin is the beer. And it's just a different, it's just a different approach to style. Some breweries are, I kind of refer to them as balls to the wall breweries. Like they have an idea and they're like, how can I take this chocolate beer and make it as chocolatey as I possibly can? Like I think Untitled Art is a great example of that. Untitled Art makes fantastic beer, but like if you buy an Untitled Art beer and it says chocolate on the side of it, like it's going to be straight up Hershey bar. Like it's going to be, whereas you get some stouts that have chocolate in them from some other breweries where there's a subtle hint of chocolate in there. It's not overpowering and it just kind of complements what the basic beer is. That's more the style we do, is more complementary flavors as opposed to, oh my God, that's like overpowering. I'd say the one area maybe that we don't always do that is some of our pastry stouts, because then the whole purpose of that style is to really showcase a sweet flavor. And then some of the fruited sours we do, we'll go pretty over the top with some of the fruit on those. I've actually got one we're working on right now. I'm kind of finalizing some recipes and doing some testing with it. Is a fruited sour that's going to have a pretty fair amount of fruit in it. It also may have some small, slightly sour, kid-shaped gummy candies in it.
Nice.
So it should be pretty interesting, because we try to stick with the legal theme for a lot of our beer names. We have tentatively named that beer Custody Battle, because it's everybody's going to fight over who gets the kids. So I think it'd be a fun one. We'll probably be brewing our test batches of that within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks.
That's hell yeah, that's amazing. And I know we can't wait to get down there to
up there for me.
Up there. Oh, I guess up there for Hoppy, down there for me for the opening of the brewery. Especially because the beers that we have had from you guys have been amazing, and this pumpkin dunkel, it's everything I want. It sounds like, because I don't like when it's overpowering like a pastry stout like I had last night. I can't do the overpowering flavors, so when it complements, that is in my sweet spot.
And your Supreme Court Justice was a great New England, and I bet it's even better in person because you mailed it. And so I know that's got to affect the flavor in those pumpkins.
From the tap.
So you did a dunkel pumpkin though, so I feel like I often see pumpkin ales, and you did a lager. So is there any reason on that, or is that just preference of the brewer?
So you'll actually see 2 different beers labeled as Dunkels. So you'll see Munich Dunkels, which are lagers, and then you'll see traditional Dunkelweiss, which is still an ale. It's just it's still a wheat ale. So the one we did is still an ale, but it's the reasoning behind it really was we wanted something that was a different base. You see pumpkin beers, you pour 10 of them into a glass and they all look like the beer that's in your hand. I mean, they're all kind of like, they're all kind of that darker gold, like almost bordering into amber. They all have a very similar look to them. And so we wanted to present in a completely different format. And so we ended up going with the Dunkelweiss base. And so what we came down to when we were laying out our menu for that Oktoberfest, we knew we wanted to do the Schwarzbier, just because it's a style we love. It's one that's hard to find, but like if it's good, it's really, really good.
I can always find it in May.
Yeah.
People do made a Schwartz be with you.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I really find it.
Yeah. So we knew we had that one. And then we were planning to take 3 beers. And so we started talking about what our other 2 beers were going to be. Well, we got to a point where we knew we wanted to do a Dunkel, and we knew we wanted to do the Kottbusser. And so then it became a question of, okay, we want to do a pumpkin beer. Where do we want to put the pumpkin? Obviously, we're not going to put the pumpkin in the Schwarzbier. We probably could, but it may actually be good. I may have to try that sometime, because you'll get those coffee notes from the Schwarzbier with a little bit of pumpkin. That may not be bad. But so we went kind of back and forth between what we wanted to put it in. Well, the Kottbusser is a nice, like light gold color. It looks like a blonde style wheat beer. And it's got a very simple flavor to it. There's not a ton of complexity other than like a little bit of the note from the honey, a little bit of note from the molasses, but otherwise like it's a wheat beer. Whereas the Dunkel, a little bit of darker malts mixed in there. It has a little bit of roastiness to it on its own. We just thought it would be a little more complex base for the pumpkin, and something that you're not going to see very frequently. But really what it came down to was, with the Cobbler, we're already making a style that nobody's really heard of and nobody's had. We'd like for people to be able to try that style without anything in it.
For sure.
Whereas people have probably had a Dunkelweiss before. So we were like, okay, let's throw the pumpkin in that one. And so, that was, kind of what goes into our thinking. And a lot of times when we're doing events and stuff like that, we very frequently do one-off beers specifically for those events. And so we put a lot of effort into, what's the theme of the event? If the event benefits a certain charity, like, is there something in the charity's name or the charity's mission that we can kind of play off of for our beers? So we try to be creative in what we do, but in this one, it just came down to, we had two options of kind of what to pair the pumpkin with, and the Dunkelweiss kind of won out.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, sounds like a good fit from a style perspective, but then also, made more sense with some of the other things we were making as well.
Well, when you first posted that menu, I thought you were asking people's opinions on like, what should we brew? And I was like, oh, Dunkel pumpkin, definitely. And I was like, oh, he brewed all of these.
They brewed it. It's all there.
Yeah. Yeah. That stuff was all ready to go, ready to get served. But yeah, we had a blast doing that event. And actually so the first keg that kicked was the Schwarzbier, just because, like I said, that thing was just phenomenally good. I can't wait to make it again. We kicked around the idea of, Schwarzbier, great black lager, fairly low hop levels to it. And we've done a bunch of India Pale lagers in the past. And so we were kicking around the idea for maybe a spring beer doing a hoppier version of our Schwarzbier. So keeping our Schwarzbier as like a fall lager, but doing a slightly hoppier version of it as one of our spring lagers. So that, as we get through winter, I'll have to brew it in winter to get it lagered in time, but keep an eye out for that one. That may be one we're planning to do. So that keg kicked first. And part of that was because there was, out of the 20 brewers that were at this thing, I think we had the only Schwarzbier. Whereas I think almost everybody there had a Dunkelweiss.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so the Schwarzbier kicked quick. Yeah. So the pumpkin Dunkel kicked very, very shortly after that. And there was a gentleman, I didn't actually have a chance to talk to him in depth enough to catch his name. We were pouring somewhere between 2 and 4 ounce samples, just to kind of depending on what people wanted, but they had these little 4 ounce steins essentially. Poured him no less than 8 of those pumpkin Dunkels. So clearly he liked the beer. I think he was just like, he would circle to the back of our line and just come back up and keep getting it over and over again. So
do the same.
yeah, so that one kicked next, and then the Cobbler kicked last, but it was 3 minutes or something like that after when we kicked the other. So it was an awesome experience. It raised money for a really great charity here locally called Room in the Inn, that helps support housing, clothing, food, those sort of things for women and children that are coming out of abusive relationships. So raised a lot of money for a really, really awesome cause. This was the first year that they've done it, and they've already said, spectacular, worked out great. We're definitely doing it again next year. So we can't wait to be involved in the second annual Columbia Oktoberfest that they do. But yeah, it was a great event. It was fun to roll out some beers that we were kind of playing around with, which is always one of the things that we enjoy about doing festivals like that, because it allows us to get some really instant feedback on maybe some weird choices that we've made here and there, and begin to take those beers and say, okay, which ones of these do we want to keep and dial in to do repeatedly, and which of these were like, cool, it was fun to do it that one time, guess we'll never do this beer again.
That's awesome. So we got to start wrapping things up and move on to the boys, but I can't think of a better segue than smashing pumpkins and smashing heads.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
You've watched The Boys, correct, Brad?
Yes, I watch it every week, and watched this past week's episode already.
Perfect.
So
So we'll
I can hang out and talk.
we'll have
So if
you
you
we'll have
haven't
you do
seen
a
it,
little review with us. Yeah.
yeah, if you haven't seen the new episode of The Boys, this is where you stop listening now and
Spoiler
watch it
alerts.
and come back.
Watch it and then
all
come
the
back.
spoiler
Spoiler
alerts.
alerts.
Yeah.
This we have 2 episodes left after this past week.
Oh, that's it.
Because
That's terrible.
But thank God
Mhm.
we don't have to wait for much long because we have Mandalorian coming out on the 30th of October. So while there may be a couple weeks in between, we have 2 episodes left of The Boys.
And Supernatural comes back for
That's
a little
true.
bit.
A lot of TV shows are going to be coming back, but this week on The Boys, man, there was a lot to kind of unpack there. I feel
Dude,
like.
I mean, they started with the creepiest sex scene imaginable. Anybody just listening, Mash just muted and we just saw him yelling. Should I not say creepy whatever scene since are your kids coming in?
Yeah, my dog decided to go crazy, but
okay,
yeah,
well, it's okay if
so
your dog hears this.
this episode of The Boys, we saw Homelander and Stormfront. They're obviously, as the Butcher discovered and put together from their little interview, they're fucking. From more,
They're fucking.
they are definitely.
They weren't even subtle about it, though. I mean,
Not
they
at
were
all.
pretty. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have Homelander. He's kind of like that creepy, controlling boyfriend. He had the flowers for her, and like she went away for 20 minutes, and he checked up on her. So a little creepy there, but it's Homelander. He's
Stage 5 clinger.
The rest of the crew, they went to the Sage Grove psychiatric facility
Mhm.
where there's a lot of crazy things. Vought's apparently experimenting on creating adult soups just by injecting adults.
Yep.
Love Sausage is in the comics.
He is.
He is actually a friend of theirs, though, and I've only read volume 1. I still haven't started volume 2, so I've been reading other things. So his weakness, his kryptonite, I think I mentioned this before, is getting a boner. When he gets a boner, he can't do anything.
Well, we saw that in this episode where he
Makes sense.
chokes
But he
out.
doesn't have that power in the comic, as far as I know.
He choked
That was
out
terrible.
mother's milk with his
Dude,
penis.
MM is never gonna be the same. He is never gonna be the same after the scene.
Tell Butcher
He will
about the
never
penis.
recover. Yeah, he will never recover. And Frenchie will never let him live that down.
No, at all. Which
It gives new meaning to what is it, erotic
Autoerotic
asphyxiation?
Yeah, autoerotic asphyxiation. Yeah.
Yes, and speaking of those two, though, we got a little backstory on MM and Frenchie. Like they were all working, which is a callback to the comics. They were working with Mallory and whatnot, and kind of.
Well, that's why she quit.
Hunting down the soups, and they were like really best friends. They were hugging at one point, which if you go back to season 1, they hated each other, which was very interesting. And then we discover Lamplighter, who's actually working at the psychiatric facility. He killed Mallory's kids. Frenchie went to go save his friend who was ODing, who ended up just like leaving anyways. And that's kind of what happened, and that's what broke the crew apart, which was pretty heartbreaking.
Found out he didn't mean to kill the kids. He thought he was killing
Right.
Mallory.
Yeah. He thought he was killing Mallory, which pretty heavy stuff, I mean.
Yeah. And that was probably one of go ahead.
No, you're fine. That's probably what.
That's probably the heavier scenes in the entire episode is when Mallory shows up and they have Lamplighter in the back of the ambulance and she pulls a gun on him and he's literally telling her like, no, it's cool. Go ahead and kill me. I mean, you can tell like he's tormented by the fact of what he did. And I thought it was really interesting though that Frenchie's like, no, let him suffer. It's actually worse for him to be alive than it is if we kill him.
But he's still killing though. And I know Liberty is telling him like, oh, you're doing it for the good. Like he's still making these evil choices. So it's like, he is genuinely evil, but he has guilt about it. So I feel like they do that just to fuck with the audience.
And
like,
I think
make us have empathy for him.
I think this means he might kind of inadvertently, like they're adding soups on their team. So that way it kind of works around them having to take Compound V. So maybe he'll kind of work for them because he kind of saved their life there. He'll maybe work for them. You have Starlight, and then maybe they just add the soups. And then you see what happens with, if anyone's watched Stranger Things, we kind of caught a glimpse into Eleven's future without David Harbour if he really is dead.
He's not dead.
And he's obviously not dead, but saying an alternate universe, this is 11 grown up telekinesis just ripping people to pieces inside this place and then disappears. So I'd be interested to see how she comes back into play later on as well. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack. And I kind of feel like Homelander is going to eventually turn on Stormfront. She came out and said, hey, I was the first soup. I'm a Nazi, essentially. She was married to Vought, and he created her and all that. And that was a big reveal. Like, I was expecting it.
Oh, yeah.
But I wasn't expecting her to tell him, and he was cool with it.
Well, because, okay, so I don't think that he's actually racist. I think he thinks everybody is equally below him.
Agreed.
So I don't think he cares if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic.
He doesn't discriminate.
No.
Right. He thinks he equally discriminates.
Yeah. He hates everybody.
Yeah, he just hates everybody.
So when she said to him, like, you're exactly what we need, like, you're perfect, like, she said everything he wanted to hear, and she meant it. And he doesn't care what her end goal is. He just cares that she thinks that and means it. It's not like, she's not saying that because she's scared of him. She's saying that because he is the Aryan race. I think look at him. Yeah. He is the Aryan race.
No, you're right. I think to a degree.
Blonde hair, blue eyes, super powerful, you know. Yeah. I think he is the epitome of what she thinks should be representing America. And what's funny, though, is if you watch Inside the Boys, she's actually Jewish in real life. And she mentioned that multiple times because I think dealing with these scenes, and I mean, even dressing up with like a swastika in the background, like,
it's gotta
like,
be.
It's you know, very odd, and especially because, you know, a lot of people have a hard time differentiating reality from fiction. And you know, I'm sure people are, I mean, not being able to go outside right now and having to wear a mask probably makes it easier, but you know, I'm sure people are still saying things to her, and it's like, dude, she's not a Nazi in real life.
No, and it's all I think pretend, man. It's all pretend.
Yeah. One interesting question, though, that whole sequence raised for me. So she shows him the picture of her with the old lady. And, you know, he's like, oh, it's your grandma. And she's like, no, it's my granddaughter. And so, you know, I think the audience already knows that because everybody knows that Stormfront is Liberty. They know that she was a soup a long time ago, that she's been around for a long time. So everybody knew that she was old. I think that really kind of defined how old she was.
Right.
And I think, what'd she say, 1919? So she's 101. But the question that it raised in my mind was, okay, so we've seen Homelander's son. Homelander's son is a soup. Clearly, Liberty has kids because she had a granddaughter.
Right.
Were any of her kids or grandchildren soups? Like, was it hereditary from her as well, or is this something that Vought has improved upon over the years and it's gotten better and more stable? Like Homelander's kid has it, but maybe it didn't work previously. Because I think it'd be an interesting, just from a family dynamics thing, because then, like, wouldn't that be cool if, like, all of a sudden, like, her long lost estranged daughter pops up and helps kick her ass with some superpowers?
My theory is that they perfected it, and that's how he passed it on. And so maybe they're going to try to have a kid to pass on their perfect, like a mix between both of them.
Oh.
But also, she got it as an adult, so why didn't they give it to their kids, though, is what I wondered. Because I'm assuming since, you know, she's like, oh, she passed away of Alzheimer's, that child did not
Maybe
get
she
it,
refused it.
But maybe that's also why she's trying to perfect it. Maybe they lost a child in doing this or something.
Good theory.
So,
I don't know.
It raises some interesting questions. Definitely raises some questions.
And we'll have to just, I guess maybe we'll get answers in the next 2 episodes. But we'll see. Brad.
Right.
Sorry, I was just going to wrap up.
No, I was just going to say one last thing with the Iceman being Lamplighter. I love that he is now essentially Pyro's powers.
Oh, I forgot
Pyro
he was
was his
X-Men.
best friend / mortal enemy at the end of X-Men, and now he has those exact powers. And
I totally meant to bring that up. That's right. That is a good play. Like, he was Iceman and X-Men, and now he's essentially Pyro, either flipping the lighter and everything.
Yeah, and that's all that Pyro kid does in X-Men.
And real quick, the best part was when he entered in his little costume and everybody's just laughing at him. I lost it because he's got the stupid hood and the thing, and amazing. But Brad, where can everyone find your brewery? Should they be listening? Can we, like, all your good social medias and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the two easiest places to find us are Facebook and Instagram. So we're on Facebook, obviously, just Common Law Brewing Company, and then on Instagram at Common Law Brewing Co. Like I said, we do load our beers that we make into Untapped. So if you search for Common Law Brewing Company on Untapped, we do have a brewery page on there that'll show you some of the beers that we've made previously, and kind of what other people thought about them. On our website at commonlawbrewingco.com, we do actually have a mailing list as well that will send out information through. The main thing that we use the mailing list for, though, is to give out beer samples to people. It's a little tougher if people aren't local to us, but if you are in the Middle Tennessee area, I definitely recommend you hit up our website and make sure you join the mailing list. But mainly if you follow us, Facebook, Instagram, those are probably the two best places. Facebook is where we put out most of our event information through. So where we're going to be pouring, what festivals we're going to be at, who we're, going to be teaming up with to do collaboration beers and that sort of thing. So probably the quickest way to get the best information about us.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we really, really, really appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk beer, talk anything with you. Comics, beer. It doesn't have to be any of that. Sports even. I recognize the old Nashville Preds hat on right now. So Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Hopsgeek News. We are on Thursday nights on Hoppy Hour on Hops News. We have a lot of good breweries coming up there over the next month of October, spooky season. Where
October 9.
Tomorrow night we have Adroit Fury out of, I believe it's New Jersey. They're going to be coming on to like a heavy metal, spooky kind of brewery. So what a better way to kick off the month of October with that. October is also the greatest month because I turned 30 in 2 weeks. So shout out to myself because it is my month. But
time to get that Social Security.
It's time to retire and move on to greener pastures. But subscribe, like us, share us. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all that. Ask your Alexa to play Hops Geek News.
Yes.
She will play it.
Specify Hops News very clear, or you will get hot gay news.
Ooh, you will.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you want that, that's fine.
If
that's
you want
your thing,
some of that,
go for it.
Just
right.
watch.
But
Packers
that's what happened
games
when
with
I
me
asked it to play Hops News.
Yeah, just immediately follow up that listening section with Hops Geeks News.
You
There
never
you
know.
go.
You might. I mean, if you want some hot gay news, just listen to me talk about Aaron Rodgers, and that's actually my. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all next time. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Cheers.
This has been a Hops News production. You can find Hops News on all your favorite podcasts and social media platforms at Hops News. Cheers.